This quote really stopped me in my tracks. It was from Thomas Schwab, who is the CEO and founder of Interview Valet, which is one of the leading and preeminent podcast booking agencies out there. And if you're someone who has thought, oh, I need an agency to book me on shows, and you're not sure who to call, Thomas Schwab of Interview Valet would be among the top professionals that I would recommend, because he's got a world-class team. They do a great job. But boy, this guy's good with a soundbite. He says, big fish don't swim through funnels and whales don't click. Isn't that a big idea? I think it's a huge idea. Just think about it for a minute. Doctors, lawyers, professionals that have serious problems that need to be addressed, are they the kind of people, busy, successful, high net worth people that have time to spend 5 days in a challenge or 3 days at a virtual event, or wade through your webinar or your funnel to get their problem solved? Thomas Schwab would say that those people just want to know that you're the expert that can solve the problem, so they can get on the phone and say, hey, can you solve my problem? And can we start doing business right away? I think a lot of us would like to have more people like that coming into our world. Is there people in this group right here that would love to have serious candidates with money in their pocket that have serious problems that need solutions that you would love to take a call from tomorrow so that you could do more business and work your transformation? I think he's right. And then there was a launch debrief that I attended not long ago from Tom Poland of Leadsology, and he's a very well-respected marketer, and he's super, super smart. And he orchestrates these big, huge launches where sometimes there's 40 to 70, maybe even 100 JV partners advocating for his next big thing. And he teaches people about converting from webinars and using other people's audiences to do that. And I think the world of him. But during his launch debrief, he said, and I quote, 95% of those who registered for the free book that he was offering did not register for the webinar. 95%. Wow. So there were like 3,741 people who downloaded the book, and less than 5% signed up for the webinar. And he did say that he was able to pull a $100,000 launch out of the hat by seeing it through, and good for him. But not everybody has 72 to 100 partners waiting in the wings to support them with lead generation like this. And if you are someone earlier in your journey that hasn't yet developed those relationships, or you don't yet have a list that's sizable, and maybe your offer is new, gosh, if 95% of the people that registered for your irresistible free gift didn't show up for your webinar, you could have 3 people showing up for your thing and come home kind of disappointed. So all this begs the question, could there be a better method to reach an interested and engaged audience that's already in place? As I said, not everyone is building an empire based on a numbers game. Some are building and running highly profitable boutique-style businesses for which referrals, warm introductions, and inbound client inquiries are the fuel. I believe that podcast guesting is a perfect environment to fan these flames. Maybe you're someone who prefers simplicity to complexity. Could it be that you're resistant to cold calling? Maybe sliding into someone's DMs is not your favorite way to connect with influencers and potential clients. Here again, podcast guesting is the antidote to some of what may be making you cringe, so you can spend more time in the cake zone. More cake, less cringe. That's my philosophy. I'll tell you this story about my husband. My husband is a business exit strategist, and he wants to work with businesses, service providers who want to exit their businesses profitably. And his business coach told him, cold calling is the answer. You've got to call CPAs, attorneys, people like that, smile and dial this many hours a day, and get on the phone with people and talk to them about your services. And for a while there, he was doing that and is hating it every single minute, hating it every single minute. And so, I'm married to the guy, and I said, wouldn't it be amazing if you could get on the phone or a Zoom call with a host that was actually interested in business exit strategy, and there was a whole established embedded audience of people that were interested in selling their businesses listening in to the conversation? Wouldn't that be so much more fun and fruitful than smiling and dialing for hours at a time, getting voicemail and a gatekeeper? He says, okay, you sold me, Nancy. And so he got on a home services podcast at the referral of someone we both knew. He rocked the podcast. As a direct result of the podcast, a roofer called him and said, I loved your contribution to the show. I want to sell my practice. Can I please get on the phone and can I hire you? And he said, yes, you can. And he got a client from it. And then the host of the show was so delighted with the expertise he brought forth, she referred him to a panel of CPAs to be a guest expert on some panel where all of them were interested in having referral sources to send all their clients who wanted to sell their businesses. That all happened from his very first podcast. Isn't that so much better than cold calling? I love this stuff. Podcasts are about points of view, unique perspectives, and conversations with influencers, as opposed to being a designated training event that's punctuated by a pitch. With webinars, we know that there's going to be value delivered, but we're also kind of holding our breath that there's going to be an offer and there's going to be bonuses and there's going to be false urgency and there's going to be all those things. And with a podcast, it's not like that at all. It's like, gee, Michael, it's been great having you on the show. You delivered so much value today. What is it that you would like our audience to do as a result of meeting you today? Won't you give us one thing that they can do? And then I'm guessing you have that in your pocket and you can say, well, I'm so glad that we had this opportunity. Yes, this is what I'd like people to do. And then you're off to the races, With podcast guesting, your episodes reside online indefinitely, making you and your ideas easy to find in a Google search to reinforce your brand and reputation. Just yesterday, having completed a Media One sheet for Charlotte Jacobs, who's a member of the MetaMind, I just randomly looked for Charlotte Jacobs on podcasts. And what do you know? All these podcasts come in that show Charlotte Jacobs has been speaking up on podcasts. Anyone that's interested in Thrive Academy and considering dancing on the head of the pin about whether or not they're going to enroll in the program is probably going to do their due diligence. And isn't it so awesome that you could simply find her in a Google search and listen to some of her podcasts and get to know her, how she shows up, how she delivers value without feeling the pressure of having to buy something. But if you listen to her and you liked what you heard, chances are you're going to beat your own path to Thrive Academy to see how you can participate in the next Client Attraction Summit. So when you are a guest on a podcast, you get to benefit from often loyal, curated, and embedded audiences that are searching for information about what you most want to talk about. And isn't that like a blessing that you actually get to talk to people that are interested in what you want to talk about? So how did I discover podcast guesting? Well, many of you know that I was a publicist for many, many years. I owned my own publicity agency and I worked for a lot of big name companies who wanted to be seen, heard, and celebrated in the media. Roger Staubach, the football great, was my client. Fran Bigelow of Fran's Chocolates was my client. Olympic Hot Tub Company was my client. I even did some work with Vern Yip and David Bromstad of HGTV. I have been a publicist all my life, standing behind powerful people, making them look really big in the media. But what happened in 2020 happened to all of us, that COVID-19 came to call. And what happened? It seemed like the sidewalks rolled up instantaneously and our calendars went blank right away and our appointments fell to the floor. And a lot of people are like wringing their hands and they're thinking, what the heck are they going to do to build a revenue rush for their products, programs, and services, even if they can't even leave their houses? And I saw myself a great opportunity. Maybe I could broadcast my own brilliance from podcasts from my own office and bring those people back to my own programs. And because I was so good at being a publicist, I knew what to do and I knew how to do it. And it turned out I created a way to do it so other people could learn as well. And so what did I end up doing? Back in 2020, I had a 5-day challenge model. It's just where I would lead trainings from my Facebook group where I would take people through the prepare, position, prioritize, pitch, ping pong, and profit system, my 6P system. I take them through the 6P system. I teach them what to do and how to do it. And people would book themselves on shows instantaneously. Well, after training over 5,000 people how to book themselves on podcasts so that they were never beholden to an expensive agency ever again, you could say that I've created an awful lot of a wave of opportunity for people who now feel empowered that they can do that too. And I feel really proud of that. And what I take away from all of it is that if you have hot topics dialed in and you have suggested interview questions that guide a conversation in a strategic, smart, savvy way, and you have credentials that are compelling to a top host to have a conversation that they want to have where the audience will be served, you can do this too. And you'll never be hungry for an audience ever again. So one of my participants, Brent Scarpo, booked himself on 9 spots and 20 speaking gigs. And he also got an opportunity to be a corporate online trainer with a leading company as a direct result of the first 3 videos of this program. And he told me that he booked his 12th podcast as a result of the training that I provided. And he's not alone. There are a lot of people that were having this kind of an outcome. And so I know what I'm teaching is practical and easy to embrace. It's not rocket science, and you can learn it too. But what I know for sure as being a publicist for my whole life is that good stories stand on their own merit, and conversations that connect bring qualified leads and sales, provided you're talking to the right people. The audience to message match has to be right. I know that there have been times when I've been on a podcast where there were only 27 people listening. This actually happened to me where the host said, "Nancy, we know you're an expert in this. We're just going to hand over the microphone and have you teach us for 15 minutes. Ready, set, go." What would you do if a host handed you the microphone without any warning and said, "Can you teach for 15 minutes on something that our authors and speakers want to hear from right now?" So I just bended and swayed with the situation, and I pulled it out of a hat at a moment's notice. And there were 27 people on the call. I delivered the magic. And when I looked at my inbox afterwards, 4 of those 27 people had said yes to my 4-figure offer instantaneously. Now, I suck at math, but if you do, somebody can help me out. If you do calculator, 4 divided by 27, that's a almost 15% conversion rate instantaneously. There was no webinar, there was no funnel, there was no nothing. They liked what I said and how I said it and knew that they wanted more, and they decided to say yes to something right away. Does anybody want some of that? Let me hear a yes in the chat. So I've been putting these beliefs to the test for the last 4 years to create good results in my business. And I'm also staying true to my super skills. I'm a good talker, and I like creating relationships with influencers. Are you a good talker? Do you like creating relationships with influencers? There's nothing technology based about either of these skills. And so if you're the kind of person that shudders at the thought of having to do any kind of tech, podcast guesting, people, I'm telling you, it's your ticket to ride to a whole new planet. So that's what we're here to talk about. Podcast guesting, the high-touch strategy to attract premium clients and elevate your brand. You've got the primer now. Are we excited to learn even more?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to cover surprising podcast listenership, why some premium clients prefer podcasts over webinars. We're going to cover how to leverage the right podcast to bypass complex funnels and tech overload. And we're going to maximize ROI through podcast guesting by repurposing and creating strategic partnerships. That's what we're going to talk about. So do business owners register for webinars? Of course they do. I pulled a report from Contrast, and there's a link there so you can check my stats. But 91% of B2B professionals say webinars are their preferred type of content. 83% of them have fewer than 50 live attendees, and 63% of webinar views are on demand or by replay. Webinars mostly have less than 100 registrants, have higher attendance rates, and you can see all the stuff. But there's no doubt that webinars are a great thing. And I'm not telling you not to do them. No, no, no. I'm giving you strength to continue to do them. But do business owners also listen to podcasts? Well, yes, they do. According to a study by Lower Street and Context FX, 55% of business owners and founders are listening to podcasts daily. The bigger the brand, the bigger the scope for listenership. And research shows that 70 to 72% of owners with businesses with 100 to 500 employees are regularly tuning in to podcasts. Businesses with 100 to 500 employees, people, those are whales and big fish. If you want more whales and big fish, be where they are listening, and podcasts are where they are going, according to the research. As we know, webinars require some back-of-the-house elements to succeed. You've got to have the opt-in page, the thank you page. You've got to have the show up live reminders. You've got to have the SMS reminders to show up live. You've got to perhaps have a PowerPoint presentation. You've got to have the after the call sequence to ensure that sales flow as desired in time for the cart close. There's just a lot of machinations associated with pulling these things off. And that's just fine. But just be honest with me for a minute. Is there anyone in the room that finds some of this just a wee bit overwhelming? And when you consider that only 3% of live callers are ready to buy right now, well, that's super sobering, because it means that the majority of registrants are kicking tires, seeking insights, or making a habit of bellying up to the free bar until such time as they have dollars to invest in their success. Have you ever had frustration about these belly up to the free bar people that are just going from one free thing to the next free thing, stealing your time, stealing your energy, and never buying anything? I've struggled with that. This can be a lot of moving parts to navigate for those who have yet to build an audience for their own work, or yet develop an influential partnership pattern of JV partners to help them build the buzz. I'm guessing there are a few people here that don't yet have those influential JV partners building buzz for their launches, and there's some people here that don't yet have 4 or 5 figure lists that they can reach out to every month to say, come to my call. That 3% number, that one gets me every time, because I said, I was on a call with 27 people and 15% of them decided to buy from me right away. And most people, it's only 3% that are converting from a webinar. So podcast guesting can be simpler for some because you can secure the booking for the show and the audience is already there. You show up for the interview, you deliver value, great rapport, you have some fun. When the show goes live, you can share the show across your socials, your e-zine, or your blog, and then you welcome results. And the results can be all kinds of intoxicating, wonderful things. Like, for example, you could have new leads come to you from sharing your call to action. You could have inbound client inquiries that lead to new engagements and sales. New strategic partnerships could form with the host or someone who might be listening. What other kinds of wins? I already told you the story of me getting 4 premium clients from a podcast with only 27 callers. I told you the story of my husband getting the speaking gig and the client from one podcast, one of the first ones he ever did. Maybe the host hires you for your done-for-you service or decides to enroll in your mastermind or other program. Stranger things have happened. And why is that? It's because when you get involved in a conversation with someone of influence and you talk about things of consequence in an unscripted, genuine, relatable way, You share things from your heart, from your soul, and from your gut, and you create a relationship where other people are voyeuring in and thinking, what a cool conversation they're having. These are people I'd like to have as my friends, my service providers, the people that are going to have my back and be in my corner and by my side. This is how it works. If you're good talking and good building relationships, you're just going to have fun. You'll be in the cake zone every day. What other wins? You could get invited to be a repeat guest or maybe even a periodic co-host. Tim Wade, who many of you may know, is one of my clients, and he's a world-class relationship coach for men. And I saw that this woman was doing this podcast about dating when you're 60 and better. And I introduced Tim to this host, and I said, I think the two of you have something to talk about. Well, they did have something to talk about. They hit it off like gangbusters. And now Tim is a periodic regular co-host of this show. He gets to show up for this top-rated podcast about relationships, which is right in his wheelhouse. And he doesn't have the responsibility for producing the show or doing any of the machinations associated with it. He loves it. You could also be introduced to other new hosts or clients from the host or from people who are listening. And you might get invitations to train or speak live on virtual or summit stages because someone in the audience heard what you were talking about, loved it so much that they found their way to your website and invited you to do this thing that was going to pay off in ways that you didn't even know how good it could be. It all is so organic. I just love this stuff. Is anybody excited about this? I see heads nodding. I like that. So all this is to say, what do I recommend? Should you do webinars and 5-day challenges and 3-day virtual events and 3-day live events and all these things that you do? Do the thing that you love to do, that's fruitful for you, that you know how to do, and ride that train all the way to the bank. But in addition, if you want the big whales and the big fish, I want you to podcast guest also. Because the big fish and the whales may not swim through your funnel and they may not click, but if they hear you on a podcast and fall in love with your expertise, they're just going to be smiling and dialing their way to your point of contact and asking to do business. And wouldn't some more of that be a win for y'all? So if I could invite you to set your intention, please believe that your work deserves a much wider audience, and now is the time to go out and find it. I'm going to challenge you to create a new habit to book 2 podcast guest spots a month and make it a consistent, steady habit.
Wait, back up, stop for, I just wanted to, because that was a big ask, and I just want to know who's in on that ask. I'm in. I see Orly's hand up. Hopefully Megan and Russell, I see Russell's hand. That's great.
Good. I'm glad I see this. So it's just 2 a month. It's kind of like, remember the cranberry growers or the almond growers, I think it was. You got these 2 folksy guys standing in the almond grove and they're going, people, 2 cans a week. That's all we ask. 2 cans a week. That's all we ask. If we're eating 2 cans a week, everybody, the almond growers are going to be selling a whole lot of almonds. You're going to get all the health and nutrition benefits of almonds, and the world will be a much better place. So 2 podcast guest spots a month on the right shows. This is something you can weave in to your current scenario without upsetting the apple cart. I see Kamari's raised your hand. Go ahead, Kamari. I'd love to hear from you.
Is there a difference in your research between an audio podcast and a virtual face-to-face? Do you see that? Is there a difference in the numbers?
You know, the numbers are kind of an interesting thing, and I bet you Michael Neely knows a lot about this since he's kind of in the podcasting space. It's very hard to get the numbers on how many listeners there are to any particular podcast. You can find out how many downloads. I think the host will know how many downloads they've had. But I'm going to get into how to choose podcasts in a little bit so that you can get on the right ones. And if I don't address your question properly at that segment, then I'm going to probably bring Michael on to elaborate on that piece.
Thanks.
Yeah. And if other questions come up, just let me hear from you. So who wants to monetize when they're on a podcast as a guest? People always say, I want to make money. The host is not paying you to be a guest. more and more in this day and age, there are some hosts that are actually asking you to pay to be their guest. I am not a fan of pay to play, though there may be some scenarios that you can make a case for it. But if you want to monetize from a podcast as a service provider or an expert or thought leader, I recommend that you have a 4-figure offer that's already selling so that you can be quick to earn return on your time and effort. It's good to have an irresistible free gift that's already converting from click to lead or another singular call to action, such as if you want to invite consultations, for example, we'll make it easy for people to book them. So if they say to me, gee, Nancy, people have loved what you've talked about today, what is the number one thing you want them to do as a result of meeting you today? I might say, if you feel that I'm the person to teach you how to make the most of podcast guesting and you're serious about investing in your success, you can apply to have a chat with me. All you need to do is go to getknowngetpaid.com/apply, and I'll see you on the other side. But at least I'm asking for what it is that I want. And the URL is easy to spell, easy to say, and easy to remember. And that's really important for whatever call to action any of you would extend, because one of the peculiarities or realities associated with podcast guesting is that most people are doing something else in addition while they're listening to the show. They could be driving their kids to school. They could be mowing the lawn. They could be doing the dishes. They could be riding the bike at the gym, or riding running on the treadmill and listening to get their automobile university on foot. The likelihood of them remembering, well, you can find me on Facebook and you can send me a smoke signal and you can send me a text and you can get on my calendar, and you give them 42 things to do. How many of them are they actually going to do? Give them one thing to do. This is where I call ping pong. You want to ping pong the listener or the viewer back into your world. So you want to keep the call to action simple. You want to sell the sizzle. You want to have some urgency. You want it to be evergreen so that no matter when they listen to the podcast, whether it's now, next week, next year, 2 years from now, that link will still work. Because that's one of the other benefits of podcast guesting, is that the links to these shows reside online indefinitely. And you can go to Google and say, Michael Neely on podcasts, and you're probably going to find hundreds of shows where Michael Neely has been on a show. And if you want to listen to Michael Neely go on and on about his awesome expertise, you can listen 24/7 wherever you are in the world. And I'm betting my bottom dollar that at the end of the call, when he says, and here's what you can do to take a next step, that the links that he's offering are going to be valid, because that's going to be this long tail person that's going to find his way to Michael's doorstep to say, hey, Michael, let's do business. And I would like that for each and every one of you. So we're going to do one singular call to action. And I'm just going to sell this thing about the sizzle. Well, I've got an online course. Well, I've got a free gift. Well, I've got this thing that I think you'll really like blah, blah, blah. Like, find a way to talk about the thing that you're doing so that people actually want to run and not walk to go get it. You can't live without this thing. This thing is going to change your world. It's available right now, and all you got to do is run to michaelneely.com/gift, like whatever it is. But make sure that you're as convicted about the call to action as you were about the conversation that led up to it. So now we're going to get into how to choose shows. Remember, the part of this that I get the most intoxicated by is that there's an audience already assembled that's interested in talking about what you want to talk about. So when you go to iTunes or any of these other cool places that I'm going to tell you about, you want to find shows that have at least 20 episodes in the can, because you know that they're serious about it and they're producing regularly. And if you can find shows that have 100 or more episodes, that's even better, because they've been at it a while and they're committed to it. Because a lot of shows, they fade out after very short time. And you can look up on Google pod fade, and you'll get all kinds of data about how many people start a podcast and then fade out before anything really happens. So go after shows that are actively producing, where there's 20 to 100 shows as a good start. They should be regularly producing, and you can find this out when you find them on Apple, iTunes, or wherever you go to find your podcasts. That will show you the dates of the episodes that dropped, who their guest expert was, and there's even this little popularity bar that you can look at to see how popular the episode was. And if you're curious about sampling the podcast, all you have to do is click and listen. And you can decide if that show is the right vibe for your tribe, if that's the right kind of conversation you want to have, and if it's one that you would be proud and honored to contribute to. If you don't listen to the show, how can you possibly pitch the show as to why they would want to have you as their guest? And then the other thing you can do when you're checking them out on iTunes is you can look at their favorable reviews and notice what people say. And if you want to really stand out with a host, you will listen to the show and you will post a 5-star review that's compelling, remarkable, memorable, and brings a grin that more than demonstrates that you really did listen to the show, you thought it was awesome. And then what you do is you capture a screenshot of the review that you posted. And then when you decide to reach out to the host, you can say, "Dear Bob, I listened to episode number 58 and I loved it so much that I posted this 5-star review. And guess what? I think I've got value to add to this conversation, and here's why. My name is, this is what I'd love to talk about. I think this would be a great segment. Don't you agree? Let's get on the phone and make it happen." Just because you demonstrated that you cared about the currency that matters to that host, they want more downloads. They want more 5-star reviews. They want people that are interested in what they're interested in. And it's just like Dale Carnegie said, when you take interest in other people, isn't it interesting that they're going to take interest in you? And chances are you're going to get yourself a booking and be having the time of your life. Because I say more cake, less cringe. Do what's fun and leave the rest of it to the side. Are we having fun yet? It's going, okay. So what do you want to talk about? The worst thing you can say is, "I want to talk about a variety of things in a variety of ways, and I can't wait to get started," which says absolutely nothing. So who is your audience? And do you have a host-friendly bio that's easy to speak and say, that's not too long? Can you name and claim 3 hooky hot topics that would be juicy and delicious and intoxicating to have a conversation around? And can you dial in 3 suggested interview questions to guide an interview, just in case the host doesn't have his or her own format and is going to rely on you to help them shape the show that's going to take shape? When you create these hot, hooky topics, you want to not just say, "Let's talk about how to get unstuck and why it matters," because there's like 45 people linking arms around the world that will talk about how to get unstuck and why it matters. Maybe you have 3 proven provocative ways to get unstuck and the one thing never to do if you want to live there indefinitely. That sounds a little better than the generic. So sometimes specificity will serve you well when you're trying to create those hot, hooky topics. 3 uncommon ways to, 5 proven ways to avoid this common mistake and the one mistake you didn't even know you were making. Like, find a way to say something juicy and delicious that someone would say, "Gee, I hope I'm not making that mistake." So I've been fortunate to work with a number of our MetaMind members to help them create their hot, hooky topics, their bios, their suggested interview questions. And if you're watching this presentation, you can take a screenshot of this slide, or sure, these slides are going to reside online in the MetaMind community so you can study them subsequently. But you'll see that, like with Charla, her bio is kind of long, but she had a lot to say. But what's really cool about this 4-paragraph bio is if the host can only read 1 paragraph, the first paragraph serves her really, really well. And I want to tell you why. I'm just moving this up here. Since 2004, Charlotte Jacobs and her husband Jesse have guided over 150,000 coaches and holistic practitioners to magnetize high-paying clients through their transformative heart-selling system. While Charlotte and Jesse have earned over 35 million in sales, their greatest win comes from Thrive Academy members who have earned a collective 500 million plus. Many of today's transformational leaders manifested their first 10,000 revenue months after working with them. Charlotte, welcome to the show. If they only gave her one paragraph, this first one is great because it lets you know she's been at it for a long time. They've accomplished some magnificent results for a very specific, terrific audience. They are successful in their own right, but their greatest success is in the clients that they are transforming through their powerful work. If there's more time, maybe they'll be able to go to the second paragraph where she says at the heart of their teachings lies the ancient wisdom of the 5 elements, which Charla discovered during a healing journey and training to becoming an acupuncturist. She transcended those struggles to manifest a partnership, a joyful family, and become unstoppable in creating inspired tools and templates to empower Thrive Academy members to create these 10,000 revenue months. So you can see that she sounds kind of cool, even for 2 paragraphs. If you need 2 paragraphs like this and writing them is going to make your eyes twitch and your fingers twitch and make you want to like put your head in the sand because it's not your favorite thing to do, go to ChatGPT and say, I would like help creating a 100-word bio in the third person that a top host for a podcast would gladly and enthusiastically read. And what I know about myself is that I've been at it for this long a period of time. I've touched and transformed this many lives. This is my specific, terrific modality or method to getting this problem solved. And what's special, different, and preferred about me is this. Knowing what you now know about me, won't you spit out this remarkable bio that I don't want to toil and trouble a moment longer to create? Thank you very much. And then you hit enter. And you know what? You will get a bio delivered to you instantaneously that will be pretty darn swell. And then it's up to you to put your own unique spin on it. But so many people perseverate on this way too long. It doesn't serve you. ChatGPT is friend, not foe. Use it for good and profit. Okay, hot hooky topics. What are Charla's? The power of vulnerability. How sharing your most vulnerable moments can forge genuine connections with potential clients. Discover the 3 crucial questions to ensure you share the right stories at the right time. Ooh, I didn't know that there were 3 crucial questions to ensure the right stories at the right time. I'm going to tune in just so I can hear what that is, because that's something that's important to me. Or mastering presence in client enrollment. Learn how to cultivate a peaceful and present mindset, even when you feel the urgency to enroll clients now. Explore Charla's method to client enrollment that transforms the energy and enriches every conversation. Wow, that sounds interesting. And I love this one. Why living fully expressed is every coach and holistic practitioner's most powerful lever for client attraction. And the question is, what roles do artistic roller skating, dancing bachata with your husband, and homeschooling your teenage sons play into your vision for joy and success? You're already learning about her by reading her hot hooky topics, and it's getting personal already. I think she's going to get lots of bookings because she's got fun topics that people are interested in, and she's got some personality that she's packed into it. What are some of the suggested interview questions? Humble beginnings to transformational leadership. Your journey to empowering coaches and holistic practitioners began in 2004 with a modest start and a lot of humility. What can you share? Can you share more about your early days? That's an opportunity to really get to know her. What are the top 3 enemies of success? Based on your 20 years of experience with all these clients, what are the top 3 obstacles that these people face when trying to grow beyond one-on-one work? Great. You see how the questions are strategically and thoughtfully presented so that the host can say, I don't have to do any work. I've got this world-class person and I can't wait to have her on the show and it's going to be amazing. I want you to have that set up too. And so there are other people in our community from MetaMind who are ready to go to the show. Among them, Milana Lashinsky, Christina Hills, and Mark Porteous. It doesn't have to be graphically magnificent. It has to be factually accurate and give the host what he or she needs to know whether or not they even want to have you on the program. And these examples, when you have more time, you'll study them, and then you can mirror them with your own do-it-yourself effort. And if you're not someone who loves to do things yourself, well, you know somebody that's actually pretty good at this, so keep that in mind. So when it comes to finding shows, a lot of people want to know, how do I find a show? How do I find a show? A Google search is a simple and easy place to start. What if you were a doctor who wanted to learn about investing? You would look for, top podcasts for doctors to learn about investing. It's not that hard, but the Google search will return some of the better shows that would be right for that audience. And what do you know? Here some of them are. A couple of my clients are financial advisors that work with people that wear white coats and are worried about how they're going to invest their money to fuel their retirement. So the white coat investor is perfect for Bill Schulteis to be showing up talking about how to use your wise money. These doctors who are working 24/7 probably don't have time to go to a webinar or a 5-day challenge, but they just might be listening to some podcast to see how they're going to invest all this hard-earned cash that they're making, saving lives and making things, doing plastic surgery and doing everything else that they do. So do a Google search. That's one thing you can do. That's simple and easy. And that'll limit your search to, you can even say top podcasts in 2024 for this, that, or the other, because you'll find things that are current. Another thing you can do, and this is one of my favorite things, is you can join Podmatch. And Podmatch is like, forgive the expression, it's like Tinder for podcast guesting. I think they might even say that it's that for them. There's thousands of hosts and there's thousands of guests, and they're all on this portal, and they're looking to make a match. And so if you take the information from your Media One sheet and you post it onto their portal with your headshot and maybe a welcome video and a couple of keywords that you've populated, I bet you bottom dollar that when 24 to 48 hours has passed, you're going to have some invitations coming into your inbox for people that want to book you on their show right now. And if you've stopped perseverating about your bio and your hot topics and your interview questions and you just got in the game, you would get the instant validation that someone wanted to hear from you right away, sooner versus later. And wouldn't that just fuel your enthusiasm to do it even more? There are podcast matchmaking groups on Facebook. There's one called Next, what is it? Angel Tucci and Jamie Atkins. It's Your Next.
Need a guest?
Need a guest. That's the one. Needaguest.com. There's like 30,000 members at needaguest.com. Join for free. Needaguest.com. See how other people post and see if you can get an idea how you can post in a similar manner. But what you don't want to do is when someone says, I'm looking for someone who can talk about small business entrepreneurship in 20 minutes or less, who's a woman, and you write back and you're a man and you say, hey, I'd like to be on your show. I can talk about lots of things. Let's DM about it. No, don't do that. What you want to do is, hey, Bob or Susie, I listened to the show, posted a 5-star review, and have a sexy, provocative topic that I think is right on the money. And here's where it is. Are you as excited as I am? And can we get this party started? Show up like a human being who's a good talker, who's building a relationship, who's making it easy for them to say yes. And you'll get inquiries that say, your response really stood out. Here's my booking link. Please book your session as soon as possible. Happens to me and my clients all the time. What if it was happening for you too? All I'm asking is for 2 per week, 2 per month, 2 podcast guest spots a month. That's all I'm asking. Okay, moving on. So once you have the show, it's like Monday morning quarterback time. Oh my gosh, this is so great. I was on a show. I think I'll listen, see how I did. I mean, I do that. Do you do that? I know some people that are television performers and stuff. My dad was a television performer, and like he would always watch his own reruns, but not everybody does. Some people don't like to watch themselves or hear themselves, but I highly recommend that you do, because you'll learn something. You'll learn whether or not you're a good talker. when the shows come back, if you're proud of them, share the episode on your blog, your social media, or your newsletter. You can also create micro content from each episode to appeal to those big fish and whales that you'll find on LinkedIn. And I do a lot of this. I have an amazing podcast repurposing person on my team. And every time I'm on a show, I send her the MP4 video file if it's video, or I send her the audio file. And I say, find the best sound bites and create 1 to 2 minute snippets that I can post on LinkedIn and elsewhere so people can experience me in 2 minutes or less. And we get a fair amount of engagement on LinkedIn and elsewhere with these micro content. And it's a great way to give people a taste without having them have to opt in for the whole shebang. You want to share your best episodes with prospects before meeting for discovery calls. I think we all need to have as many touch points as possible with our potential clients so they can feel that we are the person that they can trust to guide us to the outcome that we desire. Just this morning, I signed up for John Schumacher's webinar thing that he's doing. And then I got an SMS message that said, so glad you signed up. Here's access to a keynote talk I gave about maximizing your evergreen webinars. Why don't you tune in? And while I was at the gym today, I decided to tune in. And boy, this is a nice guy. He's got great stage presence. He had great content to share. So if I did have a discovery call on the calendar, I would have done my homework and felt very confident that this is a guy that I would feel comfortable doing business with, because he went the extra mile to help make it easy to build that bridge of trust with me simply by how he baked it in. If you do lots of podcast guesting, you can create an online press room for all of your shows. And I have an online press room, and when I'm done with this part of the formal presentation, I can show it to you. But it's pretty compelling to go to this online press room and see that there's like, I don't know, 80 or so shows that you can listen to 24/7 wherever you are in the world. And if you like the way I put a sentence together and you like what that I'm teaching, I'm helping you to build a bridge of trust that I might be someone that could help you too. You can also, as I've said, your episodes make you so much easier to find in a Google search, and people do like to do their due diligence. Why should I hire A, B, C, D, or E? You're going to hire A, B, C, D, or E because you've done your homework and you're satisfied that they've got the know-how, the track record, the integrity, the whatever goodies that you consider valuable to serve you well, no matter what your outcome. So my slides just got stuck. Oh, and let one good thing lead to another, because how many times has it happened for many of us that you were a guest on a podcast and someone heard you on the podcast and said, wow, that was awesome. I loved what you did on that podcast. This is what happens to me a lot because I repurpose quite a bit. The way to be the guest that top hosts can't wait to book is to be the perfect guest. That means that you're going to repurpose and show up after the fact, demonstrating that you cared enough about the opportunity to make sure more eyes and ears can see it. Well, all the other podcast hosts that are wishing they had guests like you are noticing that you did that. And they're probably going to come and find you and say, I love the show that you did, but I especially loved how well you merchandise it. You're the kind of guest I love to have on my show. Will you please be on my show too? Because in the beginning, it might feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill and you're learning new skills and it feels a little bit unfamiliar. But pretty soon your invitations to get booked on shows come pretty organically, and it's you sitting in the catbird seat saying, well, I'll do this one, but I won't do that one. I'll do this one and I won't do that one. And isn't that what we all want, to be our own version of whale and big fish? Okay. So what do I want you to do? Thank you, Jack Canfield, for the rule of 5. If you're going to book yourself on 2 or more shows a month, I want you to take 5 inspired actions every day to advance to your biggest goal. So that means, heck, what are you going to talk about? What are your hot topics? What are your interview questions? What makes you special, different, and preferred? There's 4 things for you to figure out this week so that you can get on the path to booking yourself maybe next week. I want you to be consistent. Show up at Podmatch and respond to opportunities that come your way, and do it in a timely manner. If you want to be booked on a show and you've made several attempts and they still haven't responded, want it enough to follow up. And I'll tell you a little story here. Many of you probably know David Newman, The Selling Show. He's a Hall of Fame speaker in the National Speakers Association. He's kind of a big deal. I have a lot of respect for him. I wanted to be a guest on his podcast. It was just, I made a list of like the 8 podcasts I wanted to be a guest on that year, and his was at the top of the list. And I tried everything I could think of to turn his head. And as it turned out, we had a mutual friend that invited me to be a guest on his show. His name was Dan Janelle. And Dan Janelle and I had this fabulous conversation. And when the conversation was over, Dan said, wow, what a great conversation. It's so good to connect with you. I really love what you're up to. I'm wondering if there's anything more that I can do to support you. And I said, well, could I make a wild ass guess or request? And he said, sure, what is it? I said, it's on my wish list to be on David Newman's podcast. Do you know David Newman? He says, I know David Newman. He's a friend of mine. I said, would you introduce me or do something to help open the door? He said, I'll do it right away. So I thought, bam, exercise your ask muscles. But sometimes you exercise your ask muscles and you get a yes, and then you think something's going to happen instantaneously. And so I thought, okay, he just introduced me to the guy. And then, like, what happened? Absolutely nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, shoot, did I overshake it? Did I do something wrong? Did I don't know what. Because I wrote to him and I said, I'm so honored to be introduced by our mutual friend. This is something I'm really excited about. I'd love to be in a position to talk about blah, 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 whatever it was. And he didn't follow up and he didn't follow up. And I was feeling kind of bad. But I thought, if I want it, I have to want it bad enough to be crazy about it. And so I wrote him one more final email and I said, if you're not stuck under heavy furniture, won't you please give me a call? Which is a line from When Harry Met Sally. And he said, oh my God, I remember when Dan introduced us. Any friend of Dan is a friend of mine. Yes, I'll book you on the show. How's next week? And that's how it happened. So you may have somebody's show that you want to be a guest on and you think that you're hearing crickets, want it enough to get it. That's all I have to say about that. Aim as high as possible. Aim as high as possible. Your good friend who just started a podcast where there's 0 listeners and they don't know what the heck they're doing, good for them. I'm happy for them, but you don't have to be on their podcast. It's very time consuming to get ready to go to a podcast, show up, be your amazing self. And if nobody's listening, how is it going to serve you? So aim high. Want it enough to follow up. And then, of course, when the microphone goes silent and you're patting each other on the back and saying what a great time you had, be open to see what other cool things can manifest, because they may say, we're doing a podcasters cruise and I think you'd be a great guest to have on board. And hey, maybe you could be part of my launch, or hey, we're doing something here and I think you'd be perfect for it, because you can give to them, they can give to you. You could also say, I know 5 amazing people that would be fabulous guests for this show who have very specific value to add. May I make powerful introductions to you to these remarkable people? And if he says yes, then you've just done a solid for 5 of your favorite friends who've already demonstrated to you that they want to be podcast guests and that you want to help them out. Referrals, introductions, warm introductions, all this can happen if you just be present to it. And none of it has to do with any big fancy funnel. So how much do you want this result to be on shows consistently, month in, month out, so that your brand can be shining brighter and you can be this great big deal that you know that you already are as you're showering with the shampoo bottle in your hand, singing into the shower? I am daring you to step up. I want you to decide that podcast guesting is going to become your new supplement to whatever other strategies you're pursuing to achieve success in business. I want you to ask for the bookings while always aiming high. I want you to resist the temptation to quit because not everyone will say yes, but the right people will. And one good yes leads to another. And all of a sudden you're in execution mode. And when you do nothing, nothing happens. But when you get in the game and you have really good intentions, really good things happen. So if you find yourself saying, I'm going to get ready to be a guest on a podcast, I want you to drop out of that club right this very minute, because there are thousands of shows that are waiting to hear from you. You can get podcast ready, media savvy, and on message to welcome these results. And you can be found in a search, in a favorable reference that will build a bridge of trust for you and these people that are lucky enough to hear from you. And isn't that a remarkable thing? My best advice, when you add 2 best fit podcast guest spots a month to your agenda with the intention and belief that those conversations will attract big fish and whales who are ready to do serious business with you without swimming through your funnel, you will be one happy camper, and you'll be sending me thank you notes that I taught you all of this today, because I think that whatever big thing you do to build the business, podcast guesting is a beautiful, powerful supplement that will bring those big fish your way. And I challenge you to make it happen and report back. I hope you got value. If you did, I'd love to hear from you. If you have comments of appreciation to share, you can share them in the chat or send them to me personally. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I didn't address leading up to this very fine moment.